At this time, I'd like to call the Monday, May 11th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting to order. That brings us to the first item on the agenda, which is roll call. Bid here. Price. Longton. Here. Hema.
Here.
Charnel.
Here.
Schoblum.
Here.
And Lindell.
Here.
That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
We've got a motion by Longton and a second by Ms. Charnel. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the fourth item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the April 13th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I've got a motion by Mr. Longton and a second by Mr. Lindell. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to number 5, which is public input. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Before speaking, please give your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone here for something other than what's on the agenda? All right. That brings us to the public hearing for this evening, which is rezoning a former hospital site. I'd like to open that public hearing at this time.
We can dim the lights, Bill, thank you. All right, a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more here.
There you go.
There you go, okay. This is not an unfamiliar item to the Planning Commission, and I think even to some of the residents in the audience tonight. This proposed redevelopment of what's now the former hospital site and building has been underway for quite some time. We've had a number of conversations both here with the Planning Commission as well as with the Economic Development Authority, as well as with the neighborhood, as well as with several folks at Mayo over the last couple of years as the decision's been made for them to relocate and build a new hospital. The Planning Commission at the last meeting, the April meeting, actually initiated the proposed rezoning. Colors fooled me. The proposed rezoning of not just the former hospital site itself, which is sitting here, but also the 4 homes to the north of the alley and the north of the existing hospital, as well as the north half of Block 19, which includes what currently or has been the parking lot to serve the hospital and clinic, and then 3 single-family homes in this location. All of this area in pink, it looks purple there, but it's actually pink, on the zoning map, at this point is zoned residential business district, and I'm presuming going back to 2006 or before that the reason for that, at least in part, is the fact that the hospital was there and was operating as a business. The proposed rezoning initiated by the Planning Commission is to go from the residential business district zone back to residential 2 district, which is a single-family residential area. So in addition to the hospital building, the north half of this block and the north half of this block would also be brought along under this proposed rezoning to an R2 classification. As kind of a side note, this is where the existing hospital sits today, or at least the vacant hospital building sits today. We've also, in the past year or two now, visiting again with the neighboring property owners, Cannon Falls Housing Initiative, Habitat for Humanity, the folks at Mayo, we've kind of evolved into a proposed repurposing of the hospital site once the building's removed to create 2 80-foot wide lots on the east and west end of the current hospital building and 2 interior 70-foot lots in this location. There will not be a vacation or proposed vacation of the street. We talked about that previously with the Planning Commission. Planning Commission and others have weighed in on the preferred plan, and I would say that this is probably the plan that was, if not unanimously, recommended by everybody close to it. So in the event that the property is rezoned, the step that's continually evolving here is that the hospital building will be demolished, and in its place will be these 4 single-family lots, the 2 on the end at 80-foot frontages and the 2 interior at 70-foot. And probably 2 of those lots will be acquired by the Cannon Falls Housing Initiative, and probably the other 2 lots by Habitat for Humanity. That appears to be the direction that we're heading. So tonight, the public hearing, we've notified everyone within 350 feet of the proposed area to be rezoned of this public hearing, and we've published in the Cannon Falls Beacon. So the Planning Commission tonight has the responsibility to hold the public hearing. There are some residents here. They may or may not wish to speak. I haven't received any phone calls, nor have I received anything in writing relative to the proposed rezoning tonight. But we'll hold the public hearing, and when you're satisfied that the public's been heard, you can close the hearing, and then we'll move on to consider the resolution recommending the proposed rezoning. Any questions of me at this point? Okay. If not, I don't know if anyone in the public wishes to speak for or against, questions, comments?
Is there any particular obvious reason why they're not all 75-foot lots?
The current ordinance, the R2 zone requires 80-foot frontages on the corners. We have a little bit larger setbacks for buildings on the corners as opposed to the interior lots, and the minimum lot width is 70 feet. So that's why. Yep. It reflects the R2 zoning.
You said that you spoke with members of the community before about this?
Yes.
When? Was there one other meeting that took place besides this one?
The Planning Commission has probably had several meetings to consider this.
With the residents? How were the residents notified?
I've had one meeting in one of the houses formerly owned by mail where we notified folks in the area that we're having a meeting. That was
notified.
okay. That was last year.
Okay.
Okay, that was done last year, not recently.
Okay.
And then going back 2+ years, when Mayo first started talking about what the reuse of that property would be, there was a number of public meetings back at that point as well. Yeah, so probably the only official notice, you must have received a notice regarding tonight's meeting, okay, of the rezoning, right?
Anyone else or anyone from the public have something they'd like to say?
I'm ignorant, Habitat for Humanity, so what are their plans for the houses?
In the event that Habitat proceeds with the purchase of 1 or 2 lots that are available to them, they would build a home under their program. They've got several homes in the community now and several scattered throughout Goodhue County. So they're again a provider of housing for low and moderate income purchasers.
Dave, you're showing those 4 lots, and on that block, is there 4 more lots, or that's just the lots for the entire block?
That's the lots for the entire block. There's 4 lots to the north across the alley.
And are those the same
Those
size?
are predominantly 75-foot lots.
Okay.
I'm in one of those houses right now, so you mentioned the zoning, what does that entail?
You're in which?
I'm right behind the house.
Oh, there will be no impact really to any one of the existing residences in that area. They are all considered lots of record. They are all considered residential uses today. So in the future, if you wanted to sell your property, the zoning would comply with the existing use. So anything that's allowed in an R2 district, which is predominantly residential, single-family residential use, will be legal and permitted. The residential business district that's there today allows some additional opportunities from a land use perspective for business development. That will go away in the event that the new zoning is approved. So business uses will no longer be allowed basically in the R2 district.
Can multi-dwellings go on
Not in the R2,
Not in the R2?
right,
They're single family?
right.
What are the plans for the alley?
The alley will stay in existence in terms of the right-of-way that exists there. In the future, when the city council initiates the reconstruction of streets and utilities in that area, the alley would be looked at in conjunction with that plan. We have not typically, the council typically has not redone reconstructed alleys. So at this point, once the hospital's removed, the site will be leveled and regraded to permit positive zoning, so you're not going to receive or use positive drainage, so you're not going to be receiving the water runoff from this development. But in the future, it's expected that the city council will revisit again the West Side 2 infrastructure replacement program and come back like they did in the first phase a couple of years ago and rebuild streets and utilities in that area, but probably not the alley.
Does Habitat for Humanity have minimum or a maximum square footage for houses? Or
You know, I don't know exactly their parameters specifically, but yes, they do have guidelines that they work within in order to keep homes affordable.
So is Habitat for Humanity and who else? Who else?
The Cannon Falls Housing Initiative is more generally known as the school building program, house building program.
Okay, where the high school kids built
Yep, yep. And the three most recent homes that they've built are in the Union Court area, just a little bit north and west of you.
Are these lots being donated, or is there any bidding?
They're negotiated sales to both Cannon Falls Housing Initiative and assumedly to Habitat for Humanity.
Is that open to anyone else?
Not if these 4 lots are both transferred by ownership, by mail, to those 2 groups.
This isn't by chance going to be a SEMCRA deal at all?
No,
So they're transferred from mail then to the city, or given to the city, or given, does it go through the city then?
no. The Economic Development Authority has been working with Mayo for the last 2+ years on a memorandum of understanding to work through the development of a land use plan for this area when the hospital's removed, and working with Mayo, but not purchasing properties, not holding the properties for resale, simply working with them to kind of resolve the multitude of issues that goes hand in hand with a redevelopment of this type.
So when these houses are built, the property is paid for, right, until that house is on the second sale? Is that correct?
No, the properties will be purchased and owned by at least Cannon Falls Housing Initiative. I can't speak on behalf of Habitat, but I know that they're in,
So they will pay mail for those, or?
correct. Yeah, the city's not involved at all in terms of the financial transaction.
All utilities will have to be paid by the new owners? It's not a city issue?
Correct. Yeah, in the future, when West Side 2 infrastructure is replaced, it will be handled similar to West Side 1 infrastructure replacement and the East Side 1 replacement project, which included assessments for a part of the cost for the improvements, with the balance of the cost being financed by the city.
Will this be coordinated with the new streets that are supposed to be going in this year? Or, there's supposed to be new streets going up on, right, in that area?
They'll more than likely be next year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would all be coordinated together, so it'd be a one-time deal, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Has there been any more discussion on green space at all for the parking lot area?
Parking lot is being dedicated by the city by Mayo to the city as a park. So there'll be a small neighborhood park where the existing parking lot that
Right.
served the hospital is located.
Good.
I heard somewhere that that wasn't gonna happen because it was too close to the freeway. Is the plan still to put a park there?
Yes.
Along with the housing through the high school, there are several restrictions that go with that, isn't there, as far as commitments to the housing or something along those lines?
What do you mean by commitments to the housing?
In other words, somebody can't buy it and turn around and sell it as a rental
correct.
right away.
Correct.
Right.
So Habitat for Humanity is gonna purchase these homes from Mayo, purchase the properties from Mayo, build the houses? Or is the Camp Falls Initiative gonna build all 4 houses?
No. Cannon Falls Housing Initiative will deal with just the 2 lots that they have an interest in, and Habitat will be separate from that.
Okay, so they're gonna build houses there, and are they gonna sell the houses to new owners? Or are they going to just, are they gonna be the landholder, or landlords and have people live there?
Cannon Falls Housing Initiative will build and sell to a buyer,
Okay,
a family traditionally, and my understanding and expectation is that Habitat will do the same. These are not built for rental purposes.
okay.
Would they probably all 4 be built at the same time, or would it be
No.
spread out?
No, the plan, and again, I can speak more specifically to Cannon Falls Housing Initiative because I'm a board member of that group. And I can't speak with as much detail about Habitat at this point. The Housing Initiative will purchase 1 lot this year, and will start building the home for the school year in August, early September. So they'll build 1 home this year, and they'll have the right to build a second home next year to coincide with the school year. Habitat, my understanding is they will, if they go ahead with the purchase of 2 lots, will build 1 home this year, and I'm not sure if the second home will be built next year or if it's going to be a split year. That I don't know. But there'll be 1 home under construction late summer for the school kids this year.
When are the plans for the demolition of the hospital?
When are the plans?
Yeah, does this have to get approved before they start tearing down the hospital, or is that already in the works?
The hospital has prepared plans and specs and is accepting bids on the demolition work related to the hospital. The one schedule that the hospital is aware of that affects Cannon Falls Housing Initiative is the need for the initiative to have the home in time for the upcoming school year. So the hospital building will be gone prior to the school kids starting construction in late August.
Does anybody in the city oversee that?
The demolition?
I live right behind the hospital, so my
Yep.
concern's over the alley. I
Right.
have concerns now with what's been going on
Right.
with the tear down. And so, I mean, is that gonna be monitored, or is it just whoever the
They-
contractor is just gonna do what they want?
No, it's, Mayo has developed a list of plans and specifications for all bidders to comply with, so the successful bidder will need to comply with those requirements, standard specs. The project will be overseen in part by the Goodhue County Building Department under the demolition permit, and it will be partly overseen by the city engineer related to the restoration of the site. And we've been working very closely with them on those specifications, we as a city.
Any other comments, either from the public or planning commission members? Hearing none at this time, I'd like to close the public hearing for the rezoning of the former hospital site. That brings us to discussion item Resolution 2015-4, which is the rezoning of the hospital.
In the event that the Planning Commission makes a motion to approve and a second of that motion to approve, Resolution 2015-4 would recommend to the City Council that the property that we've talked about be rezoned from residential business district to the R2 classification. So if that's your wishes, it would simply take a motion second and approval of that motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2015-4.
I'll
the rezoning.
second.
We've got a motion by Mr. Hema and a second by Mr. Longton. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to discussion item 7B, which is interstate building supply and design.
At the April meeting, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on a variance request for Interstate Lumber Design and Supply to expand an existing building located in this area. The main entrance or the main retail area for Interstate Lumber is just to the north here. But this Outlot A is the area that the existing building already encroached upon, and Interstate would like to expand that building to the west and further encroaching on the Outlot A, which is not owned by Interstate. Planning Commission recommended the variance. The City Council approved the variance, and the next step for Interstate then was to come back, which they have since done, and make a request to the city to sell Outlot A to them. And in the event the City Council approves that sale, Outlot A would then be owned by Interstate. They would have the variance. They could expand the building in the way that they suggested that they'd like to at the April meeting. In order to facilitate the sale, state statute says that the Planning Commission needs to also weigh in as to the compliance of this request to sell the Outlot A to a private party, that it would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So in the event that you agree that that's true, we'd simply need a motion, a second, and your approval to recommend to the City Council that they proceed with consideration of the sale of Outlot A to Interstate Lumber to allow them to expand their building as they proposed, as well as to fix the problem that was created years ago when the South Pines addition was platted. So it's really a statutory requirement to the Planning Commission. If you think this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, you're able to recommend that the council go ahead and pursue the sale. And I would suggest to the Planning Commission that it is. It fixes the problem, and I think it's consistent with the goals and policies of the comp plan. Colleen?
I would motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
I've got a motion by Ms. Charnell and a second by Mr. Lundell. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Brings us to discussion item 7C, which is concept development plan review.
I'll just say some introductory comments and then turn it over to our guest, Dave Fallon. Dave is with Progressive Rail. I think some of you probably know Dave or have seen Dave in the past. Dave has come to us with a proposed redevelopment project and plan that would be completed in conjunction with bituminous roadways. I've asked Dave to come in tonight and, for informational purposes, let the Planning Commission members know what's being discussed here. In the event that Dave and Mr. Peterson at Bituminous Roadways pursues this project, they're going to need to come back and make an official application for some rezoning in order to meet the requirements of their proposed development. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave, and Dave can introduce the project to you.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to come in and chat about an exciting project. Put this on the screen here. Hopefully this helps a little bit as I talk through it, and I've got some color narrative to go with as well. So again, I'm the owner of Progressive Rail, and feel free, I'll hand out my cards. If there's any bumpy crossings or things you want to talk about, you can direct them to me, and I'll do my best to take care of them. We're proud to be in a true railroad town. A little background first. It was interesting. Cannon Falls, I love the history here. I mean, it had two very solid railroads here at one time. And of course, the retrenchment and a lot of downsizing the industry. We're down to one, Progressive Rail. But what's exciting is we're rebuilding, and you're seeing the line completely rebuilt from Northfield all the way to Randolph. That was about a $6 million investment, and more to come from Randolph down to Cannon. So we're putting a lot of good rail in, welded rail, new ties, new ballast. It's getting to be a very strong infrastructure, which is nice because it opens up lots of opportunities, not just what we're talking about here today, but many others. I'll give you one statistic, and I'll get onto the project at hand. I find this really fascinating, is that in the whole basket of freight, whether it's pipeline, air freight, rail, truck, whatever, take a look at what it is today. It doubles by 2036 by our own government accounting office will predict that. So it's going to double significantly. So rail is really important if you want to take congestion away, if you want to have a clean, safe mode of transportation. It is a proven way to move goods safely and efficiently, and with it comes the wave and the ripple effect of commerce and careers and community involvement. So, and we can talk a little bit about the malting house too, because that's very much part of this. So one of my dreams, if you will, when we came here and took the line over, is that how do we develop something that's well landscaped, that's cohesive, that creates a lot of opportunity. If you're welcome to come up as a group to Lakeville, where our headquarters is at. It's richly landscaped, it fits in well to the industrial park. And I think the city people there, the city administrators will tell you that about 4,000 jobs emanate through the Adair Lake Industrial Park, first, second, and third ring of kind of employment, the core, the support, and the others that follow. So it's good to see what can come of a good railroad. Specifically for here, you'll recognize that you've got the Ray Rapp property, and a little pointer here, thank you.
You might have to speak a little closer.
Okay. You've got the Ray Rapp property, which is right here, and we've been in discussions with Mr. Rapp. And you've got our property that we bought from Ray right here. And it's a nice parcel, but it doesn't allow you to really do the bigger, grander things. Kent, our customer, Kent Peterson, has optioned this already from, is it Cannon? Cannon Equipment?
Cannon Equipment,
Cannon
yes.
Equipment Company. And he's worked that out as part of a proposal we'd like to present tonight here, where really we take this whole site and make it nicely landscaped, we make it cohesive, we reduce the number of driveways going into all three, we landscape it well, and I'm just going to pop to this board when I say landscape it well, and I do hope that we can set a time where everyone can come up and look at what we've done in Progressive Rail's headquarters, but we're really big into using native plants, a lot of feathery grasses, a lot of pine trees, and it's been a very successful formula for us in our business because when we bring clients down, it just looks nice, it's well for the neighbors, great habitat. So these are the things that you'll see we've done in Lakeville and other communities that we're involved in any facility that we own. And we work with very good landscape contractors that come in with plants that thrive on abuse. We've all seen berms built, and in a year or two the pine trees are dead on top because nobody's there to maintain it, so what was the point? So you do things that are right, that are proper, and make sense. It can be done well with berming. This is a very early concept plan, but our hopes for today is introduced to the idea of taking three disjointed parcels, make them one with a common scale, make them one with the ability to have rail and make it accessible to a lot of the smaller industries. You'd be surprised how many small companies are using the rail here in Cannon Falls. You know, you've got Brian Bolden, you've got Sustain, you've got other new companies looking at locating here. Envirotech Services, you've got OJ is a very cool company that does concrete work, construction work, lightweight aggregates, things of that nature. So that also spills across into the Cannon Falls Malting House because we want to do some landscaping in front there and repurpose some of the things that just are never going to come back. Some of you may remember Bard's Tale. Back in the day, there was a small brewing company that wanted to come here. That's just not going to happen. The building has got to a point to where time has passed it on for becoming a malting house again. Lots of good pieces of it, but we want to start demolishing parts that will just never serve a logical need anymore. So that's in the works too, and everyone at Cannon Falls has been very nice to work with and very supportive. So that's the master plan, is start here and then work a little west into the malting house, and just open to your comments and hoping you can see the benefit of making something really good out of three odd parcels into one really good parcel.
Maybe Dave, if you could talk a little bit more specifically, at least about ProRail and what your plans would be for use
Absolutely.
on the property?
Absolutely. You'll notice there's an old ramp, which is going to get upgraded right to where I'm pointing here. So that's good for the smaller customer that may not be able to afford or have the ability to have their own rail siding to their facility. But there's a lot of cabinet shops, there's a lot of landscape companies, there's paper companies that are in or near the area here that can benefit from rail. So it's called a team track, basically. It goes way back in history where a team track was where a team of horses would go with a wagon to the track and pick up their goods and then go off to the farm or back to the smaller village. So we want to keep that public access to rail very, very helpful and visible. A lot of the big railroads don't take the time for someone that might ship 1 or 2 cars a year. And that's not Progressive Rail. We were very aggressive on maybe a brick company or any small entrepreneurial company that would use and benefit from rail. Rail is on average 4 times more efficient than a truck. So there's huge savings if you can put it on rail. But the disconnect for people is how do I make rail work for me? And that's what we do. Other things that we've done over here in the past, and we do want to pave it, we want to fence it, we want to landscape it, de-icing salt, dust control compounds, lightweight aggregates, landscape. We've got a company called Xylem Enterprises out of Chicago coming here. That's going to bring in the exotic rocks like the lava, the Western Sunrise. You've got some of the fern green, anthracite types of products that will come in. It's good, and it's something that they'll come in for a few cars, bag it, and move it on. So think of it as anything in your daily life that can come in by rail in bulk would be an ideal location to use for this site. Boxcars too. I mean, we've done a lot of super sacks, things of that nature. The idea of the RAP property is we're looking for a place to bring in more employment down here ourselves for our maintenance away team, locomotive work, things of that nature, but have an area for there's a warehouse, shop, things of that nature. You can bring the equipment in, not a locomotive, but you can bring the maintenance away equipment into the shop and maintain it there, which brings in your skilled craftsmen, your electricians, your welders, your painters, things of that nature. So we've got that as far as an early plan. Doug Gilbertson, we've worked with him very aggressively. He's using rail now and bringing boxcar loads of salt in and fertilizer, things of that nature for his business. So it's been a good benefit for him as well. Other than that, it's just an area that we're hoping to have better truck flow. Again, I talked about reducing curb cuts and use this as a precursor before we're ready to start after the demo on parts of the malting house across the street. Our timeline is pretty aggressive. We're hoping to be working with Kent here, and his goal is it's an asphalt cement terminal, not manufacturing of asphalt. It's not a hot mix plant. Basically, it's asphalt cement that's brought in opposite of the season, and it just sits in the tanks and it's cooled. And then it doesn't have that mixing thing where you'd have all the local mix trucks go out to the job site. This would feed his mixing plants and bring the product in as it's needed. So you don't have that kind of activity. Dave, I think we heard 12, 15 trucks a day maximum. And in season, none during the out of season, basically. Some in by rail, some by truck. The other thing is when you hear asphalt, you wonder about odor. Well, they have a lot of high-tech carbon filters, and that's all vetted out in the process as we go through. But it's interesting that no matter what we as a railroad or Kent does, is it all has to adhere to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency standards, which are very tough, and that's really your litmus test you have to go through and present to the city as well. So berming, any kind of containment, things of that nature, that's all gone through and brought back on a full plan. Again, this is just a high-cut concept drawing. So Kent Peterson is a locally owned company, Batumius Roadways, family-owned, been around since the 50s. Father started it, second generation. They've done work in Cannon for you. They've done a lot of trail systems in the area. A good high-quality company, again, locally owned, good people, and very pro support of the local community as well. He's engaged everywhere he goes. He's engaged in the community, which is nice, as is Progressive Rail, too. So I think we make a good team. This is nice, too, because I alluded to the investment we've made from Northfield to Randolph, and now from Randolph to Cannon. Activity is good. It breeds more activity, and as we make way at the malting house site in partnership with you and your team as it becomes available, we'll sit down and talk about what's the best use. Warehousing comes to mind. There's a great demand for warehousing. Rail-served, interior car docks, things of that nature. There's plenty of land there that can work well for it, so we're going to look at that as well. But for this side, think of this side as bulk, think of the malting house as some of your merchandise traffic, things of that nature.
You were mentioning schedule
Yes.
for you and/or
It-
for Bituminous Roadways?
We're hoping that there's a favorable if you will, nod here. Then we go to the next step, which is help me.
Actually, would
today.
make a formal application and come back to this group in a public hearing setting.
Okay, great. So that's 2 weeks from now, or is that,
The soonest you could do it would be June 8th.
okay,
That'd be the soonest with coming back to this group.
great. And, we welcome feedback, and that's why we're here, is to get your initial reaction. But the idea is that, again, to clean up 3 pieces, it raises the value, it makes it more useful, it controls truck traffic, it allows us to do some things that you can't do on one of the small. It's like the 3 pieces are too small by themselves, but they're great together. And having railroad use lets us have the discussions and talk about new industries that are coming in and talk about them as we invite new customers to look at Cannon Falls. It's a real good collaborative approach as to what makes sense and what works. And I was really impressed how the tank farm is set back so nicely, and when you do a landscape of this nature, and we want to do that too, it really fits together well.
They be liquid tanks then, or they?
They're liquid, but it's called liquid. It's liquid asphalt or
Yep.
liquid cement. So it comes in and then it just cools and solidifies, and then come season they start heating it up, and then just goes into transport trucks. And then it goes to one of his 3 asphalt mix plants. But he will never build an asphalt mixing plant here, and that's something he's agreed to put in writing as well. I think that's some of the fears people say, well, if this is this, what's next? And by design, the parcel that he's looking at is filled out. There is no more room, and I don't think Cannon Equipment would have any more space. This was it.
Okay.
So we tried to get something that's tucked far away, that is screened. It fits well. The other thing that we do at other communities, and I don't know, please research Progressive Rail. I think if you talk to any of our customers or some of the local people, is that we try to be engaged as much as we can. We do get asked to be part of the chambers, but every single community asks us to be part of the chambers. That's a lot of chamber meetings. So we try to do different things. If there's special events, if there's a Santa Claus train or something that's passionate for that city, every city has something they're working on. And whether it's a fire hall or whatever, we like to be engaged in that. We have a good track record of that. Randolph, Railcats, they made that name. That had to be us. So we're sponsoring them in a big way. Things like that. We like to give back to the cities as well. And I think that it's nice that we're again hiring local. We're staying with the local hardware stores. Everything we buy is right here, and that's even spilled into Lakeville when we need supplies. It actually is bought locally through here as much as we can. So we like the small entrepreneurial companies too. And you're dealing with the owners, so we can talk what's logical, what works. It doesn't have to go to a big railroad off to some distant land. So in a nutshell, Kent and myself are coming together. They work together. One doesn't make sense without the other. It's kind of a 3-legged stool. Kent, Progressive, and then our own piece with RAP together. So it's those 3 pieces make one. He would have his own property tax, his own PIN number. That's important. We would have ours as well, but we'd have easements that crisscross back and forth, which allow truck traffic and keeps everything condensed. You don't have trucks waiting on a street to get in. It's just all housed and neatly housed. We talked about truck traffic, David. You remember that as far as what makes sense, and we were cognizant of routing trucks that make the most sense for everyone. It's exciting with the new bypass coming. I'm sure you're equally as enthused about that as we are.
Is Pro Rail, are you Empire Builder Property, or is that?
We are. That's our
That's-
real estate.
So Pro Rail or Empire, one and the same, you would be proposing to purchase RAP's property too, so you would control, I guess let's call the south 2 pieces?
Yep, we've talked to Ray, and we're talking back and forth, and he knows that we toured it, his family, his sons have been very nice. It's an appealing property. I wish it was bigger, but we can make it work. And it just doesn't, what we've been struggling with, it doesn't work to try to do it all on our parcel, the middle. There's just not enough room. Ray's isn't enough room. With Cannon, that opened it up and made sense then. That was the breakthrough. And as Cannon said, they had no use for it. There just was really no plans for it other than just a dirt lot. And I think, is it true, David, that they wanted some easement? There were some parking easements that they negotiated, or some access agreements, so they didn't cut themselves out? I heard that as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there's been some good thought to it. Things like lighting, and we want to hear those comments. We want to be respectful to the neighbors, and we have been in Lakeville, Bloomington. Every city we go, we serve 5 states: Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, and of course, Wisconsin. And we're proud of our track record. We employ about 135 team members, 450 customers. If you enjoy Coca-Cola products or Multi-Meal products, or if you build with Boise Cascade lumber or paper, I mean, we're probably hauling the products that you're using already today. So it's exciting stuff, and having this as an anchor for a lot of the different industries to use, big and small, is going to be important. I will tell you that there's a big move for liquid de-icers and things like that as the cities progress in the state to more liquid, less dry. We have room for some other tanks for that kind of things as it grows, but that's great for the city for cost too, to have it right here. There's a couple companies that would like to have that available. That's kind of the wave that we hear the DOTs are going, is more liquid, less dry. So those things could be a good cost advantage to have it right in your backyard.
More rust.
A couple questions that I may not have heard correctly. The gravel surface to the north of the track there, that would be for storage outdoor materials. Is that what you're thinking?
Right here?
That's
right here.
correct.
Right here?
Yes.
No, what happens is it's surge products. Usually what will happen for a carload of rock or maybe lightweight aggregates, it'll come off the car, it'll land on blacktop, and then
Right.
it leaves right away. The whole world is different now. Nobody wants big stockpiles anymore. They want just-in-time inventory.
So it would be short-term.
They queue it pretty close.
How about building plans to the south? In the RAP property area, would you change the buildings that are presently there to serve your purposes? Would you put new buildings in?
We like what we have, or don't have. We haven't bought it yet. Don't get ahead of myself. The old build.
I can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. The old building here, little sheds, things like that would get tore down. We would like to do some things that might allow for like an overhead crane on the backside, just a gantry closed in so we can lift up some of the heavier equipment and do our maintenance there, but it wouldn't
Taller
be.
buildings?
Not that much taller, because it's the maintenance away equipment
Yeah.
that works up and down the track,
Yeah,
things like that.
but permanent
yeah.
maintenance facilities.
We, that would employ about 5 people right there in itself, just keeping things up to date.
And is there an example of the tank somewhere? Is there another farm somewhere that we could see?
Yeah, and there's going to be that as a full-blown three-dimensional drawing.
I'm sorry, what?
A three-dimensional drawing would be coming with,
There's not an actual one built anywhere else?
not in this
See,
area.
Nothing similar?
Well, he brought in the one that was in Ohio or something, but it didn't really capture it.
Ashland, Ohio?
It was Ohio.
We've asked Bruce that, I mean, again, tonight is just for
Yeah, no, I'm just
informational
curious.
purposes, but
Yeah.
I think the obvious issues which you hear in any project of an industrial nature, the truck traffic, the train traffic, the noise, the odors, if any, the dust, the activity, the hours of operation, all those things are going to have to be worked through. And in this case, we've got really two different businesses
Yeah.
proposing together. So there needs to be a fair amount of additional due diligence work on my behalf, on our behalf. I think what I'll tell you, Dave, is what I know these members will do after tonight is they'll go over and take a look at this and be able to put in a little bit better perspective what this really means. But again, what I wanted to do with Dave and Kent's project tonight is start the discussion.
Yeah, there's just some parts I just didn't hear.
Right.
so.
No, I'm
Right.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you say well, we'd have to go into more detail later, and we will, yeah.
Right.
Great.
There's going to have to be, as I mentioned early on in the comments, this is partially zoned industrial. The Cannon Equipment side is zoned industrial. The RAP side and Dave Felon's property is zoned residential business, our favorite zoning district.
And,
In order to facilitate this project,
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend to the applicants, if this project proceeds, that they consider rezoning to the general industrial district, which is the more intensive manufacturing district under our existing zoning code. But even within that code, I think there's various components of one project or the other or both that are going to put it into a conditional use permit. So the planning commission would be asked if the application comes in to consider the rezoning
right,
to a more industrialized zoning classification. And then specifically to your point in questions, Bruce, would be there would have to be a conditional use permit issued for the project. And that's where, whether it's bituminous roadways or ProRail's specific interests or their project proposal, that's going to have to handled by a conditional use permit. And we're going to need more detail, obviously, than what we have here for that. So they've got a ways to go, and Dave is always, of course, on schedule. We may or may not get to June 8th. We may find that we're going to be looking into even July with a project of this type in order to move it through the process. There will be public hearings. The neighboring property owners will be invited in to comment both on the rezoning and the conditional use permit. That's going to be in the bailiwick of the Planning Commission. That's going to be your work to do. And when you're comfortable, then you'll make a recommendation for rezoning and/or a conditional use permit that would then move on to the council. So, got a ways to go here with this, and this is just really step one and a
Keep
half.
them coming in, keep ideas coming in, that's what I like.
Yeah, and I think just to build off what Dave was saying is, you talked about, train traffic, truck traffic. Some obvious things that we do already is that we don't blow the horn. We put a man with a flag out there. I mean, there's respectful things we do as a railroad to try to make it, a good neighbor. So, and I would greatly encourage you, even if you're just driving by Air Lake Industrial Park, please drive by our offices. I'll give a card to everybody, because I think that's important for you to see what we've done there. And there's some historic things I want to do, part of the old Milwaukee Road and Great Western, that were part of this community when it was growing up and still growing. And that type of theme that we've done there, I want to do exactly here. And that's in front of the malting house where we have the room, the old office spot. So I would highly encourage you when you're driving through. It's so easy to get to. Just drive by, and if you want, pop your head and say hello, or whatever works. But that'll give you a frame of this. Is there other questions about the railroad in general? Not necessarily about this, but anything you want to ask about PGR in town? Anything that's come up, good or
Any
bad?
local industry that's using the rail more for supplies?
Oh, as far as people that are using the rail?
Locally.
Oh, you've got, Doug Gilbertson right off the bat, number one, that's shipping. We've got a couple others that are working with our Ag Partners is one. We're getting awfully close to doing some rail programs with them. You've got some of the local people that are now entrenched in the malting house that are renting from us. One is Interstate Companies. That's going to be a big investor here in town. You've got Magic Salt, another one. You've got, this is a really neat company called Wildlife Sciences that's here now through the malting house. But they make suet cakes for Menards and other retailers for basically suet cake, bird feeding cakes. And he is knocking the ball out of the park, just making these little cakes and selling them to Menards. And it's a little cottage industry, but he does 12 cars a year of molasses. And the birds love it. So it's an incubator. I mean, this transloader is nothing but an incubator. It starts these little guys off, they become prosperous, and they go. So, and we have the owner of Bituminous Roadways here. So, this is Ken Peterson. Come on up. You're right on time. So, it's a good time to introduce yourself and say hello to the council members.
Hi, my name is Kent Peterson. I'm CEO of Bituminous Roadways. And I guess I thought the meeting started at 7:30. It started at 7?
6:30.
6:30, huh? Sorry.
But Dave hasn't been up that long. We had some other business in advance of that. So.
Oh, okay. So where are we at?
I gave him the overview of the facility. I think what might be useful, Dave, help me, is maybe a little background on Bituminous Roadways and some of the mechanics of the tank farm and things like that. Just, would that be helpful for the board to hear that? Perfect.
Sure.
Okay. Well, Bituminous Roadways is an asphalt paving company founded in South Minneapolis in 1946. And we serve the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. We have 3 permanent hot mix asphalt plants, one in Shakopee, one in Inver Grove Heights, and one in Minneapolis, where we originated. And our work area is within about a 20-mile radius of those asphalt plants. So we don't move the plants, we just work around them. And part of the product in producing asphalt is asphalt cement that we buy from refineries. And what we're interested in doing here is building some storage tanks and bringing asphalt in and storing it. And typically the asphalt that we would import would come in the wintertime, and then we'd use it up in the summertime. And so I'm looking to store about half of our needs, and then the other half we'd buy from local suppliers during the construction season.
So define asphalt cement.
I thought I'd
Is
bring
that
a
what
prop here. This is what it looks like. Can I approach the?
Yes.
Sure, yeah, you can throw it at me if you want, I don't care, I might want to
So
catch it,
that's,
but.
that's asphalt cement, that's what holds rock and sand together and asphalt pavements. And it's, right now you can see it doesn't flow. It flows at 300 degrees. So we heat it up to 300 degrees and that's how we can pump it and that's how the temperature we mix it at.
Great. Just wonder what you're holding behind the folder there.
So, I don't know, is there, as far as operations, we would like the opportunity to bring asphalt cement in by rail. That's what Dave and I have been talking about for a number of years, about doing something together. And I like Dave and Progressive Rail because they are so customer-oriented. And it's a little more difficult trying to work with the large railroads. And so that's why I'm really interested in doing something with Dave.
Does that come in, you say you have to heat it up, does it come in a block form or is it liquid? From
No, it
when you
comes in,
receive it?
if it comes in from local suppliers, they sell it to us hot,
Yeah,
and then we can pump it off the trucks, before it cools.
right.
But if we bring it in by rail, then we have to steam the rail cars to heat it up before we can pump it off.
Okay. Does that require a lot of water or what is it to do that?
It doesn't require a lot, and it's typically, I believe Dave probably knows more than I do, but it's typically a closed loop system where you're creating steam and then it
Yep.
circulates back around and you can recycle the water that you use.
Interesting.
And it would require above ground storage tank permit from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And they would require us to build a berm around there so that we could contain any potential
Sure.
spill.
Odorless?
There's odors with asphalt. You probably smelled them on the freshly paved streets.
Yep.
But we can control the odors by filtering the air that's vented out from the tanks. There's carbon bed filters that you can use to filter the odor out. And that's where the odors would come from, is when you're filling the tanks, it's forcing the air out of the tanks, and we can collect that, through ductwork and filter it.
So I didn't have any more questions. It's
No
interesting.
more?
Nothing for me.
Well, what do you gotta do with the tank then? Heat the tank up to be able to get the stuff back out?
Yep.
Same thing.
There's the tanks will be insulated, and then there's heating coils that are kind of zigzags through the bottom of the tanks, and you put so you'd have a hot oil system that circulates through that, or hot oil that circulates through that heating coils.
Yeah.
How many employees?
It'd probably be 5. We'd have a lab there, and we'd have some personnel loading and unloading.
But it has to be manned all the time, doesn't it? Does it have to be manned year-round?
Well, what we do right now, we have a lease on a terminal in St. Paul, and we fill up the tanks, and then we'd let them go cold. And then, depending on when we buy it, sometimes we'll buy it early in the winter, buy it in December, November, December, and then we'll just let it go cold for a few months, and then when we're ready to use it, we start heating up the tanks, and we usually heat them up one at a time. And then when we get towards the bottom of that tank, then we pour the heat to the other ones. I can show you an example. There's an asphalt terminal in Savage, and it just can give you a kind of a picture of what these tanks look like.
You want to go on the overhead, Kent? You can. It may or may not show up depending on how dark it is.
Can you see that okay?
They're 40-foot tanks?
The large ones would be 80 foot.
80-foot?
Yep. So there'd be, if you see on here,
That's the larger tank.
these
Yeah,
3 larger
of 'em.
ones, what I would have in mind is building two of the large ones and two of those medium-sized ones there with future growth opportunity to add one more of each in the future. This is not a current drawing, is it, Dave?
This is the last one I had.
Okay. These smaller tanks here, those would be, there's standard grade that you would get, that we get from our suppliers, and then we modify with polymer to make to improve the grade of asphalt. And so what we would do here is we would add some polymer to the asphalt in the larger tanks and make polymer grade asphalt and put them in the smaller tanks. And the polymer comes in these little beads, like plastic beads. So you put them in the tank and mix it up and then put it in your finished product tank.
I think what's interesting, Kent, is how much of this product goes into the whole asphalt pie that you're making. That comes out. The aggregate.
Oh, yeah, our hot mix plants where we produce paving asphalt, it's about 95% rock and sand. And this asphalt cement only makes up 5% of the product.
Kind of gives you an idea of the ratio of trucks. I did make the commitment, I hope you're okay, and we talked about this, that you're not considering an asphalt mixing plant here either.
No, this would just be the liquid.
Didn't quite hear that, but I have the idea that the sand and gravel is raw, you don't store it.
What?
Do you store sand and gravel then?
No, here we won't.
Okay.
We do that at our mixing plants. So we have three of those, and one of them actually sits in a gravel pit in Invergrove Heights, just west of Pine Bend landfill. So is there any other questions? Sorry I'm late. Just
on time.
Just on time, okay, good. Did you talk about the landscaping?
I did. We talked about certain species that are good for year-round cover, grasses, very little maintenance required. Deer don't eat them, nothing eats them, they just thrive on abuse. And they grow like crazy.
In this property here, you have Cannon Equipment here, and then I'm not sure who that is over on this side, but it's a big warehouse. And so it's Amesbury, yeah.
Well, I think that's a good presentation tonight for the commissioners, and as I said, I fully anticipate they'll be driving around the neighborhood shortly, maybe not tonight, looking. And we'll just be in communication too as far as the official process to come back at public hearings and then officially ask the Planning Commission for a recommendation on the specifics of the proposal as soon as you're ready to do that. So I want to thank you too for coming in tonight and sharing the information with the commissioners. We don't do this, as I told you, we don't do this all the time, but I think this project is probably significant enough that I thought it was a good opportunity for them to come in. They were willing to do it and at least begin to have a conversation with you as commissioners. So thank you to you as well.
Yep, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind if I hand out some address cards so you can come up and check out our landscaping and what we do?
Thank you.
Come on, please.
As long as we're doing cards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I never get a chance to call you.
No.
Thank you.
Dave, is it beneficial to leave the
You can if you like, yeah.
I'd like to.
Okay, I'll bring it over here and I'll get it. All right.
That brings us to number 8, which is Planning Commission member comments.
I'm good.
Hearing none, we'll move on to number 9, which is adjourn.
to adjourn.
Second it.
I've got a motion by Mr. Lundell and a second by Mr. Hema. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the Monday, May 11th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting.